Hey, it's a spring cleaning day today for the Franklin offset. Today I'm going to show you guys what I do to clean this thing out before I get into the spring season. So what I do to maintain this thing. I'll even show some things that I do on a regular basis to keep it clean as well that really help reduce the amount of time I have to spend with my yearly seasonal cleaning. Let's get to it. We may as well just start with the Firebox first. Most important part of any offset is the Firebox. So you go ahead and get this cleaned out. I never really ever leave ash in here. Ash actually will promote rusting and make your Firebox rust faster than it should. For me, after every cook, usually like a day or two later, I'll come out and scoop everything out and get all the ash out. I left it in here for my last cook just so I can show you guys what I do. One thing I use is an ice scoop, and then I use a shop vac to vacuum out the rest of it. Here's the ash that's in here. Not a ton of ash, but I have this lip right here that keeps the ash in. I've had other offsets that didn't have that. If you have an offset that doesn't have a lip, of course you can just brush it right out or sweep it right out, no problem. It's really easy that way. Sometimes I wish mine was that way. This one is not, and that's okay. It's there for a reason to keep it in there while we're running the offset and to keep it safer. Can you go ahead and just start shoveling this out? Just a matter of keeping it out. Alright, gonna go get the shop vac. Got it all cleaned out, got it all vacuumed out. And you can see in there, everything is clean, everything is good to go. Again, this is something that I do after every time I use it, because I really want to prevent rusting. I spend a lot of money on this pit and just don't want it to rust. If you don't clean it out every time, that's okay too. Just make sure you clean it out regularly, at least once or twice a year. Get the ash out of there, keep your Firebox from rusting out. Something that I forgot to mention is that I did take just a terry towel here, and I actually wiped top of the Firebox down, just knock all the soot off. I don't do that every time, just once a year. Just go in there and get the soot off the top of the Firebox. Next thing I'm going to focus on is Smokestack here. What I'm going to do is unbolt it, look down it, inspect it, make sure there isn't a whole lot of soot building up. Soot can restrict airflow, but it can also be a fire hazard as well, so make sure I get any of that out. And I'll also inspect the collector here, make sure there's not a whole lot of soot in there, get that cleaned out. Generally want the soot. One thing you'll notice that I'm doing here is I'm treating this like cast iron. Like I'm never going to put soap and water onto this. That's the worst thing you could ever do to an offset or any smoker really. These things, they create flavor, they develop flavor. The more you use them, the better the food is they produce. You never really want to like clean it with soap and water. Worst thing you want to do is wipe things down. You can use a scraper to kind of scrape out the cook chamber if you need to. But never just use soap and water to clean it. Just wipe it and terry cloth or a shop towel. I'll show you on these real quick. So these are the bolts for the Franklin pit, and there's just 6 of them that hold the smokestack on. That's how it's kept on. I mean, this makes it nice so you can take it off and inspect it, but also clean out the collector anytime you want to. So here's the bottom side of my smokestack. You can see there's all the soot. It's been building up. It's going all the way through the cook chamber. Not something that I want, so I'm going to go ahead and clean all that out. What I'm going to do, the idea I came up with is just using terry towels and my broom. Just going to take it and just kind of shove this through here and get as much clean out as I can. Let's come look over here. So yeah, we got all kinds of stuff coming out of here now. I'm actually going to run and go grab some gloves real quick. Now that I've gotten some of this muck loose, I'm going to just pick this up and see if any more is going to pour out. Yep, there we go. Coming out of the bottom there still. That's the side of here. That's a lot cleaner. So then what I'm going to do is just kind of run these through one more time. Any more come out of it? Take a look. Yeah, a little bit more. So I think I'm happy with that. Yeah, looking a lot better. Again, no soap and water. And knocking the stuff off. So now we're looking here, you can kind of see the collector. You know we're going to try to clean that stuff out too. So I'll reach on the inside and just kind of show what I'm doing. Just coming in here, getting all this soot knocked out. Okay, got that all cleaned out, so that's looking good now. Now that I have my grub right out, I'm going to go ahead and just scrub this real quick. A lot of people, they'll take and they'll get like their sand pads and their grinder pat in the wheels with the sand pads on them and kind of go down to the metal and all that. I don't feel like that's really necessary. I just scrub it. The thing that I do with this, it's actually pretty clean as it is. Every time I use this, I scrape it right after I'm done. Pull the meat off. While the meat's resting, go ahead and just grab your little brush and scrub it and get it cleaned off right away. These clean off much easier and much quicker and simpler when they're still hot and warm. You're not really doing anything while you're waiting for the meat to rest, so may as well just clean this while you're waiting. But I'm just going to scrub this real quick just to make sure we get everything knocked off. Flip it over, and we'll do the bottom side. If you just do this every time you use it, it makes it a lot easier. If I didn't do it every time, there would be a lot of stuff caked on here, and I may have to get a power tool out to actually clean this thing. The thing is the cook chamber. No soap and water here. Don't want to ruin any of the flavors we're creating in the smoker. Want to make sure all those flavors we've been developing, we can keep them. Still, I just have a clean cooker. First thing you notice, there's some soot buildup on the hood. Just go ahead and use this to knock that down. Don't want any of that soot falling onto the food. Something that I'll also do a lot of times is just using a dough scraper and just kind of scrape it. I may do that today. Something that I do every time that I clean out my pit, and this is after every cook, is I'll actually clean all the grease out as well. I left this in here from the last time to show you guys. It's so much easier if you just clean it out every time, especially when it's warm. Usually when I'm scraping my grate, or call my grate to scrape it, I'll also move all this out. It's usually still liquid form, and you can just push it right over to the hole over here and just get it right into the bucket. If you don't want to do that every time, it's okay. Just, do it regularly. Do it yearly at least, maybe every 6 months, depending on how much you use it. Just important to keep this out of here. Bacteria is going to grow in it. It gets kind of nasty. Doesn't smell great after a while. Push all that down through the hole there. If you're someone that doesn't like to clean this out very often, that's okay. You can clean it out any time. You use dough scrapers to kind of scrape along the edges. I may do that a little bit in here because there is kind of some buildup. And then the other thing you always want to kind of pay attention to is the top side of the cook chamber. There's going to be soot building up on the top side of the cook chamber here on the inside. So you want to make sure to knock that off also. Very simple. Take your rag, go right across. Knock that soot off the top. We don't want that falling off onto the meat. When I put my water pan, so I'll just kind of knock the soot off the top of that on the underside. And now that I got all the soot knocked out, so I'm just kind of sitting on the bottom. This is when I'll typically take out my shop vac. Just go through and vacuum out all the soot. But one thing I'm going to do first is get my dough scraper and just kind of scrape along here and knock out any of the dough that's been kicking on there and just make sure I get it clean as I can. Well, the dough scraper is dirty, but it definitely did its job. You can see now in the cook chamber, everything is cleaned out. Got all scraped out, looking really good. Going to start putting it back together. You're not allowed to put it back together, just put the grate back in and put the water pan in. Next thing I'm going to show you guys is what I do to season this thing for the season, to prevent rust and to just really make sure that this thing is going to be kept nice and clean. Now that I've got this thing all cleaned out, it's all nice and pretty now, like it always was. Now I'm just going to go through and season the thing and just get it oiled up and lubed up a little bit on some of the hinge points. I'm just going to show you some of the things that I use, some of the things that are needed for this. One is you need a food grade cooking oil for the inside and the outside of the chamber, and that's to season it. Helps to prevent rust, helps to keep your pit lasting a long time. Even if your pit's painted, it's good still to season it with oil. One main reason why is because paint is going to crack and flake off, whereas the oil is not. As the metal heats and expands and contracts, the oil is going to expand and contract with it. And then the other thing too with the oil, we're treating this thing like a cast iron pan, right? So use the oil just like you would a cast iron pan to keep it clean, keep it nice, and to help to prevent rust. That's like our main thing here, is to prevent the rust. The oil that I use is flaxseed oil. The reason why I go with flaxseed oil, and I just get a spray can because it's just easier, but I like flaxseed oil because it's the only food grade oil that I found that when it gets hard after it dries smooth and hard. It doesn't leave like a tacky, sticky feel like most cooking oils do. Then the other two things I have are just some lubricating oils. One of them here is this Remy Dry Lube. I know it's gun oil, but I like this because when you spray it on the lubrication points, it dries immediately. But also because it's gun oil, it's meant to be heat resistant, which we're doing with something that creates a lot of heat. So like on our hinges for the cook chamber door, the hinge here for the handle, even the hinges for the Firebox, I'll put this on. And just helps to make everything open. It closes easily and doesn't squeak. So the other thing that I use is this gun oil right here. It says Black Diamond CLP. The CLP just stands for clean, lubricate, protect. Put this on the bottom grate down here. to help to prevent rust. It has additives in it that prevent rust. Again, it's a gun oil, so it's heat resistant, but also gun oil is meant to prevent, the gun from rusting. You just kind of rub it in, and then it helps to slow down rust for guns. You can use that here for this. And the reason why I use the gun oil on the bottom here is because one of the things about using the cooking grade oil is just like with a cast iron pan, when you spray it on, then you heat it up, and as you heat it up, the metal has to get up to about 350 degrees for there to be that chemical reaction to where the oil sets into the pores of the metal and it hardens and it cakes over the metal. The bottom part of my cooker down here, the grate doesn't ever get hot enough for that. Same thing with the bottom of the legs. So I'll use that oil there to help prevent the rust down below. And then I'll also use it for the casters, keep them from rusting, but also to keep them lubricated. And then the other thing you need is just some terry towels or shop rags, whatever you want. You'll just use this to kind of rub the oil in on the outside, get it into the metal itself. Typically you want to kind of have the metal a little bit, you don't want to have it like burning hot, but you do want to kind of heat it up a little bit. A lot of times it's good to do this after you've cooked something and the metal's still kind of warm. Get your oil rubbed into it and then get the fire cranked back up. Another thing that I use is just an infrared thermometer. And this is just a cheap one I got. It's a Camp Chef infrared thermometer. Goes up to like 932 degrees, it says. It was like 20 bucks. This is really helpful just so you can use it all over the cook chamber and everything. Make sure that all of the different parts of the metal are getting hot enough to where you can have the reaction that you need. And I'll show you guys what it looks like also. It's pretty obvious to tell when it's working. You'll start to see little vapors and like smoke almost kind of like coming off the top of it, and that's just that reaction from the oil, from the cooking oil. Only other thing that you need really is just wood. One thing I want to point out is you still want to use hardwood or wood you would use for smoking. Kind of like what I talked about earlier. These cookers, they develop flavor over time. The more you use them, the more flavor they create, the more flavor they develop. Kind of layer the flavor in the cooker, and it makes it so that your meat and what you're smoking actually gets better over time. Because of that, we don't want to throw like pine in here or cedar in here, because we're going to add a layer of pine flavor or cedar flavor in there. We just don't want that. I got oak here. Oak is what I like to use a lot, so we're going to season this thing with some oak. Okay, so first things first is I'm just going to build the fire in here real quick and show you what I do for that. We want to kind of make a little bit of like a big bonfire in here to get it so that it's really hot and get the result that we want. I always use flat wood, which is right here as my fire starter. Flat wood just works really well. It burns for quite a while, so you can get all the logs lit. But also, the one that I use is just an all-natural fat wood. There's no chemicals or anything added to this one. I know you can get some fat woods that have like a lacquer on the outside of them. I don't really want any chemicals in something that I'm putting food in, so I try not to get woods that have that, and I try not to put any chemicals in here. So one thing that's good about seasoning is this is a good time. You can use a lot of your wood and a lot of your logs that you wouldn't normally want to use for cooking. You can use them for this. Maybe they're ones that are just going to take a long time to catch, or they're just, you don't like the bark or something, or it's just too dense. This is a good time to use those. Because once I'm done with this, I'm going to go through and just quickly spray the inside of the cook chamber, and then get the Firebox sprayed also. So really this is it. So we just kind of did like a Lincoln log style, stack the logs on top of each other. Real quick, I'm just going to start by spraying the inside of the cook chamber. Really pretty simple. Just spray it all around. I don't really wipe down inside of here. It's not really needed. This is one reason why I use the spray cans too, because it just sprays it all on its own. So we're just wanting to get it everywhere under my tray for my water pan. I may end up wiping it down in here anyways. Just to give you guys an idea, it takes about 6 to 10 cans for the size of my pit to really get it all covered the way that I like it. Once we get this, then I can close it and then do the outside. I am just going to go ahead and wipe this real quick. So what I like to do is just get my rag, fold it, and then just kind of spray it a little bit. That way the rag isn't going to soak up the oil, it's just going to help rub it in. And literally we just go through and rub it all in. Rubbing it does help to make sure you get all the surfaces. So now we got that all wiped down. What I'm going to do now is just go grab the cooking grate. That in here. and I'll just spray the cooking grate even. I'm going to start spraying the outside of the chamber. And the same thing with the inside, just going outside as best I can. One thing to notice, I did take my thermometer out. The reason why is because I just don't like to spray with oil and get it covered in oil. Once I get everything sprayed, I will just throw it back in. So we're just going to go through, get it all. The more you do this, the less oil you're going to find you have to use. The first time I did this, I used a ton of oil. I think I went to like 12 cans just because the metal absorbs it so quickly. But you do this enough and it won't take as much. And that's kind of why mine has that darker color to it. The more you do it, the darker it's going to get, just like cast iron. Oh, hey, while I'm down here, I wanted to call out, I have these mats here. I always put these mats down underneath it. This helps to keep my concrete clean because the oil will drip off on to the ground, and that just kind of keeps it from getting on your concrete. So you notice my firebox here is even darker than the cook chamber, and that's because I do my firebox quite a bit. Because the firebox gets the most abuse and deals with the most heat, I'll usually do this like once a month or so, depending on how often I'm using it. Firebox is definitely something I'll do more frequently than not. Going to go through and just kind of wipe down the cook chamber, just like this. Really all that it is just go through and rub it all down, rub it in, and that's it. So I've got everything all rubbed down, just waiting for it to all come up to temp. There's where the temp's at now for the cook chamber, but then if you look here, we're hanging out at 178. It's about halfway there on the temp as far as that goes. So next I'm just going to kind of show you guys what I'm going to do here with this gun oil. While that's coming up, I can do this down here. So really just spray it on. Going to hit the casters also. And then I'll just take my rag here and wipe it in. One thing I wanted to point out, this smoker here, when I got it, it was raw metal, and it still is raw metal. It's just been seasoned. It will change color over time, and that's the reason why mine is the color that it is now, is from the seasoning that I've done to it. Okay, got the bottom area all done now, all oiled up. Like the way it looks, looking good. Just going to go ahead and leave it like this. These connection points really aren't going to get any heat, so just spray the lube into here, both sides. That's it. Still waiting for the metal to come up to temp. Yeah, now you can see that's moving really nice. I'll go ahead and just hit this real quick. So you can see there, it just dries right away. Does not ignite like normal cooking oil would. Now that's smooth. That's smooth. The only thing I'm going to wait on, of course, is the firebox hinge and the door latch. Screw comes through for the door latch. I'll wait on those until they're totally cooled down.